Welcome back to Sports Class with Dr. K. The NFL draft is behind us, but that doesn't mean the moves are done for NFL teams. They're now on the quest to find that great undrafted free agent signing. So, for this episode, we've set out to answer a question: could we make a team of Hall of Fame players who were never drafted at all? The answer might surprise you, so stick around to the end to find out. In the meantime, let's get started thinking about that. Undrafted free agents who went on to make the Hall of Fame. Let's start out with a couple of special team players. Oftentimes special teamers don't go drafted, so it's not that hard to find some great kickers who were never drafted. Starting with Lou Groza. Now, Lou Groza, one of the all-time greats, he actually played more games than almost anyone in NFL history. For the first 14 years of his career, he doubled as an offensive lineman and a kicker. Played for 21 total years. Now, Lou Groza's biggest drawback, his nickname, the Toe. Are you kidding me? The Toe, one of the greatest kickers in NFL history. We'll do an episode later on terrible NFL nicknames. The Toe is going to be on that list. Kicker number 2 on our list. How about Adam Vinatieri? Recently became the NFL's all-time scoring leader. Vinatieri went undrafted in 1996 out of South Dakota State. Now, Vinatieri's big drawback, he's from Yankton, South Dakota. That's true. Anyway, surefire Hall of Famer when he does retire. Okay, let's move on to position players, starting on the defensive side of the ball. Undrafted players who went on to have Hall of Fame success. We're going to start at safety and start with Willie Wood, who eventually was picked up by the Green Bay Packers and was a key member of their defense through those championship teams of the 1960s. He actually had a key interception in the Packers' victory in Super Bowl I. Played for 12 seasons, made the Pro Bowl 8 times, and 5 NFL championships. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1989. Let's also talk about Emlen Tunnell. Now, Tunnell was part of that generation of African American athletes trying to break into professional sports in the late 1940s, which is probably why he wasn't drafted. After serving in World War II, he was picked up in 1948 at the age of 24 years old by the New York Giants. Ultimately, he finished a 14-year career with 79 interceptions, the second most of all time. Tunnell was also the first African American elected to the Hall of Fame in 1967. All right, there's one more undrafted safety in the Hall of Fame. That's Cliff Harris, who played 10 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys, made 6 Pro Bowls, and played in 5 Super Bowls. And how about honorable mention for Cornell Green? He played 13 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys and made 5 Pro Bowls. He is on the short list and considered by many the biggest snub in Hall of Fame history. He's not currently in the Hall of Fame, but he should be. Let him in. All right, let's move on to cornerbacks, starting with Emmitt Thomas, who was undrafted out of Bishop College but picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs. He went on to play 13 years for the Chiefs and finished his career with 58 interceptions, including 1 in the Chiefs' victory in Super Bowl IV. Next is Willie Brown, who was undrafted out of Grambling in 1963. He caught on with the Denver Broncos and later played for the Oakland Raiders, played for 16 total seasons, and finished his career with 54 interceptions. He made the Hall of Fame in 1984. And a quick shout out to Donnie Shell, one of the all-time greats for the Pittsburgh Steelers, team after my own heart. Undrafted out of South Carolina State in 1974, he made 5 Pro Bowls and is one of the newest members of the Hall of Fame, inducted in the class of 2020. And finally, it doesn't get much better in the defensive backfield than Night Train Lane. Dick Night Train Lane. That's a much better nickname than the Toe. We'll get to that in a different video. He played a year at Scottsbluff Junior College before being picked up by the LA Rams in 1952 at the age of 25. He played 14 seasons for the Rams, including 14 interceptions in his rookie year. He finished that 14-year career with 68 interceptions, the fourth most in NFL history. How about linebackers who were never drafted but have Hall of Fame worthy careers? Let's start with the ageless one, James Harrison, another all-time Pittsburgh Steeler great after my own heart. He came out of Kent State in 2002 and oddly enough was thought to be undersized. He went on to become known as one of the great workout warriors in the NFL. He anchored many great Pittsburgh Steelers teams. He's best known for 2008 when he won the Defensive Player of the Year award. He's also well known for that 100-yard interception return in Super Bowl 43, one of the most memorable plays in Super Bowl history. The Hall of Fame is certainly waiting for James Harrison. Another recent great is London Fletcher, who was undrafted out of John Carroll in 1998. Now, Fletcher played 16 seasons in the NFL and was a key part of the LA Rams Super Bowl winning team in 1999. He finished his career with nearly 1,400 tackles, one of the best ever. He will, of course, get into the Hall of Fame at some point. Now, what about the defensive line? Defensive line might be one of the strongest positions in this category of undrafted players. Let's start with Michael Bennett. Undrafted out of Texas A&M in 2009, Bennett has been a force on the defensive line ever since, and he's still going strong. Now, how about Bill Willis, who was another one of those black players coming out in the late 1940s. He actually served in World War II, so he got off to a late start in his career, making his debut in 1946 at the age of 24. He also started his career coaching with the Cleveland Browns before moving on as a player. During his 8-year career, he made 4 Pro Bowls and 1 NFL title. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1977. And how about one last defensive lineman, one of the most feared players of his era, John Randle of the Minnesota Vikings, who was known for his fierce attitude on the field and also the crazy eye black that he wore all over his face during his playing days. Now, John Randle, oddly enough, was thought to be undersized at 6'1" and 250 pounds coming out of college in 1990. Well, he proved everyone wrong. He played for 14 years in the NFL and finished his career with 137 sacks and made the Hall of Fame. So, there you have it on the defensive side of the ball. The answer is yes. Can you make a whole team from undrafted players? Let's move on to the offensive side of the ball. All right, how about offensive linemen? Let's start with Brian Waters, who was undrafted but eventually played 13 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. He went on to make 6 Pro Bowls and was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2019. And what about Jeff Saturday? Is he a Hall of Famer? Well, time will tell. A lot of people think he will be. Jeff Saturday, undersized coming out of North Carolina in 1998, but eventually, of course, spent most of his career with Peyton Manning's hand between his legs as the center for the Indianapolis Colts. Played for 14 seasons, made 6 Pro Bowls, and won 1 Super Bowl. Put him in the Hall of Fame. What about one of the biggest players in NFL history, Nate Newton of the Dallas Cowboys? Played much of his career between 330 and 350 pounds. Just a huge presence on the field. Went undrafted out of Florida A&M in 1986 and vowed to spend the rest of his career eating the teams that didn't draft him. Well, of course, didn't eat them, but he was known as one of the toughest players on the field throughout his career. How about another offensive lineman, one of the hogs for the Washington Redskins, Joe Jacoby, one of the great offensive linemen of all time, was undrafted coming out of Louisville in 1981. He went on to anchor those great Washington Redskins offensive lines in the 1980s and won 3 Super Bowls for the Redskins. And he's also on that list of perhaps the biggest snubs in the Hall of Fame. Put him in. Another offensive lineman on one of the best teams in NFL history was Larry Little, undrafted out of Bethune-Cookman in 1967. He played for the Chargers and then went on to play for the Miami Dolphins, where he was the anchor of one of the greatest teams, the Miami Dolphins teams of the early 70s, including the undefeated 1972 Dolphins team. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 1993. All right, every team needs a great tight end, and we've got one of the best on this list of undrafted players. How about Antonio Gates? Had a long career with the San Diego Chargers. He was undrafted out of Kent State because he really didn't have a position in football. He played basketball at Kent State. Eventually switched to football. The Chargers picked him up, and he had one of the greatest careers for a tight end in NFL history. Played 16 years for the Chargers, made 8 Pro Bowls, and retired with the most touchdowns of any tight end, 116. He's a surefire Hall of Famer. Who else is catching passes for this all undrafted team? Well, let's start with Wes Welker, another player who remains active today, so his legacy still being written. The speedy slot receiver was thought to be too small to make it in the NFL when he came out of Texas Tech. He's proven everybody wrong. He's had 5 seasons with more than 100 catches, led the league in receptions 3 times, and made 5 Pro Bowls. Is the Hall of Fame waiting for Wes Welker? Well, we'll see, but he's certainly going to be close. Next is Rod Smith, the greatest wide receiver in Denver Broncos history. He was undrafted out of Missouri Southern in 1994. Went on to play 12 seasons with the Broncos, winning 2 Super Bowls and setting a boatload of franchise records, including catches, yards, and touchdowns. Now, Smith, like some other wide receivers of his generation, has found himself on the outside looking in as far as Hall of Fame consideration, but the numbers warrant it. Let him in. The same is true of our next wide receiver, Cowboys great Drew Pearson. Now, Pearson was a former quarterback at Tulsa, so he wasn't drafted when he came out, but he converted to wide receiver and caught on with the Cowboys. After making 3 Pro Bowls and playing in 3 Super Bowls, Pearson is one of the best wide receivers in Cowboys history. There's a real outcry to let him into the Hall. All right, what about running backs? Surprisingly, some of the NFL's all-time greats were never drafted. Starting with Priest Holmes, who split time during his career at University of Texas, and so he went undrafted in 1997. He caught on with the Baltimore Ravens, later played with the Kansas City Chiefs, and for a time in the early 2000s, he was one of the most feared running backs in the NFL. He led the league in rushing in 2001 and was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2002. Now, he is not yet in the NFL Hall of Fame, but he is in the Chiefs Hall of Fame, so we'll take it. Joining Priest in the backfield is Marion Motley, who steamrolled defenses for 9 years with the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers. Motley joined Bill Willis as part of the Cleveland Browns in 1946, the two of them breaking the NFL's color barrier together. Motley was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1968. And our last ball carrier is running back Joe Perry, who was undrafted out of Compton Community College in 1948. He went on to play 14 seasons for the San Francisco 49ers, becoming the first running back to post consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and making 3 Pro Bowls. When he retired, he was the NFL's career-leading rusher. He made it to the Hall of Fame in 1969. So, we only have one position left, quarterback. But surely there are no undrafted quarterbacks worthy of the Hall of Fame, right? Well, maybe not. Tony Romo, who was undrafted out of Eastern Illinois in 2003. Eventually, of course, he caught on with the Dallas Cowboys, sitting on the bench for 3 years as a backup before finally becoming the starter. After a solid 14-year career, making 4 Pro Bowls and 4 runs in the playoffs, surely Romo is destined for the Hall of Fame, right? Well, we'll see. But there are some Hall of Famers who were not drafted at quarterback. Let's start with Warren Moon, who came out of Washington in 1984 in an era where black quarterbacks still were cause for skepticism in the NFL. He went on to play in the Canadian Football League, winning 5 consecutive Grey Cups before getting picked up by the Houston Oilers in the NFL. He retired as what many believe the most prolific passer in football history, if you consider his Canadian years along with his years in the NFL. Perhaps even more unlikely was Kurt Warner's rise to the NFL Hall of Fame. Warner was undrafted out of Northern Iowa in 1994 and famously spent several years stocking grocery shelves before he was picked up by the NFL. He was the quarterback of the St. Louis Rams during the greatest show on turf years, winning the Super Bowl in 2000 as part of a fantastic 12-year career, ultimately making the Hall of Fame in 2017. So there you have it. The answer is yes, we can make an entire team of Hall of Fame players who were undrafted. Wait a minute. What? There's one more position. Punter. There's only one punter in the Hall of Fame, Ray Guy, who also famously was the first punter taken in the first round of the draft. So technically, I guess, no. You can't make a whole team of Hall of Famers who were undrafted. But we're pretty darn close. And I'll tell you what, I'll take Sean Landeta or Matt Turk as my punter, and we'll do just fine with the rest of that lineup. So there you have it. Even if your guy wasn't drafted, they might go on to have a great career in the NFL. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.